Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a busy Tuesday here with you guys live from Denver, Colorado. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us a part of your day. Chase Steph is joining us. Chase, what a busy day it's been. 2 receivers on the move. And, I had a lot of time over the weekend to really process stuff. College football, NFL Week 6. A lot is happening here in the last couple of days, and it's getting me excited for down the stretch.
Yeah, a lot has happened. As a fan of the NFL, I like the NFL better than I do college. Don't get me wrong, I do watch a lot of college football games, especially now that, the quarterbacks are in play for my team. And, after today's move of what the Cleveland Browns did, sending Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills for a 3rd-round pick and a 2026 7th-round pick, it's almost telling you that either one, they want to see the younger guys in Cedric Tillman, or 2, they're trying to offload some cap space to free up some money for this next offseason, because your salary cap hit is going to be ridiculously high. Yeah. And as of right now, Kevin Stefanski has come out and said that Deshaun gives them the best chance to win. And, the more that you keep throwing him out there, the more that you're going to see this team fail. And I don't want to say I hope that it happens, but the more that you fail, the higher pick you get, which means you get your choice at a first quarterback of whatever choice you want, because the only team I could see having a higher pick than us is the New England Patriots, and right now they got the number 1 overall pick.
I would even say, too, another one in the mix at the top 5 would be the Las Vegas Raiders. So let's start there, because it was a busy day, at least with before the trade deadline. Everybody knows Week 8 is usually where the trade deadline happens. Week 8, Week 9. That's where teams really make the shakeup. So let's start there. So 2 receivers. Let's start with Devontae Adams from the Raiders to the Jets now. This is clearly Aaron Rodgers' team, which means no excuses, no chances whatsoever to basically, find scapegoats. This is all on you. And the one thing I realize about Aaron Rodgers, because I was ready to basically put him on the grill here today, because we're doing a little grilling cookout, at least from the last couple of days. But I figured I'd be fair. But Aaron Rodgers, this is the business you got into if you are the New York Jets, is that Aaron tends to be prickly. He tends to be a bit arrogant. And I also do think he tends to be a grudge holder. So my takeaway is, Woody Johnson got into this business with Aaron Rodgers for one thing: desperation to getting this organization back on track, winning games, getting into the playoffs, winning playoff games, and maybe making it into the big stage. Well, you know what? It's not that easy. Go and look at some of these track records for some of the teams that have shown their track record of success. Kansas City. For 20 years in your same division, the New England Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They've built their success. You've also seen other teams really make it into this. I mean, hell, you got the Cincinnati Bengals for years and years. Once Joe Burrow came in here and they surprised us in 21 against the LA Rams, now lots of teams are trying to implement similar blueprints. But the thing about the Jets for the last few years, since the last time they've been in the playoffs, back when Mark Sanchez was the quarterback, and you had Braylon Edwards, you had a bunch of other really good players I liked, it has not been the same. And now you get into the Aaron Rodgers business. He's already fired his coach. You've already demoted Nate Hackett. And by the way, I like the fact that Tom Downing was a lot more clever than Nate Hackett. It did not look like it was rocket science to him. The run game was a lot more efficient. I felt like the play calling standpoint, I mean, look, the Mike Williams deal, I mean, Aaron basically had to blame that on Mike Williams when clearly that was Aaron Rodgers twice playing hero ball. 3 flags up, somebody go grab it. Only one of 2 was converted. And then you go and you elevate the defensive coordinator to be now your interim coach. The defense don't look the same. So you traded defense for offense. And this is the entirety where I paid attention to, because Aaron likes to find scapegoats, doesn't tend to hold himself accountable and self-reflect on some of his actions. It's all on everybody else. It's not on Aaron. Why do you think Brian Gutekunst and the Green Bay Packers got out of this business? Because of reasons like that. And by the way, you honestly thought that Matt LaFleur was a terrible coach? I tend to think the opposite. I think he's the most clever offensive coach. Jordan Love since last year, I'm bought into it. Offensively, they look great. But, you know, that was the one thing that was crazy about it. And then all of a sudden, you try to point out basically saying that, oh, Brian Gutekunst is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. Clearly, he's fixed up the defense. He's also gotten some offensive weapons. And Green Bay is a stable, no drama organization. Whereas now the opposite, New York, the Big Apple, the big money media, it's Rip Central from left to right. Whether you are in upstate New York or you're right down in Suffolk County, I've been there before. This is exactly how New York media is. So now Davante Adams is now a New York Jet. Why? Because of Aaron Rodgers. You called out Mike Williams. He's now on the trading block, and in comes Davante. And so firing a coach, changing up coordinators, bringing in your fellow best friend from Green Bay, and you brought in Alan Lazard, you brought in Randall Cobb, you brought in a couple others. Hell, you probably would have brought in David Bakhtiari if the offensive line was trash. You probably would have done that too. But this all reflects on Aaron Rodgers. And wouldn't you know, the Pat McAfee show, you know who's right behind him? Who took a very quick flight to New York City? Oh, yeah, that was Davante Adams. He looks happy. He don't look depressed. He doesn't look pissed. So this is all on you, Aaron, because as a 40-year-old prickly quarterback who is saying we need to block the media, we don't need to celebrate for wins, like, you know, this is all on you. 2-4. I can understand teams that can be 4-2 and they probably look fraudulent down the stretch, and 2-4 teams that eventually go on a hot streak. But I think with even adding Davante Adams, I don't know if it might change a thing. I mean, they scored 20 points last night against Buffalo, who I'll get to in a second with the Amari Cooper acquisition, but this all falls on you. I mean, you're fresh from an Achilles injury. You're fresh from the Egypt trip and all this other stuff. You need to block away media. You don't need to get mixed up in all this other stuff. while you're campaigning for Robert Kennedy. Okay, so much for, the taking away the media. It seems to be following you everywhere. So this is all on you, Aaron. And if this don't go right and they miss the playoffs, what do you think Woody Johnson's going to feel? He's probably going to fire everybody. And he's probably going to put out a public service announcement to every Jet fan and apologizing. And you saw this before. Before Brian Daboll got hired for the Giants, John Mara did the same thing. I feel like, Woody, if this goes down south, it's going to happen the same way too. All right, now let's get into the next receiver that got acquired, and that would be Amari Cooper to the Buffalo Bills. I was kind of surprised here that, Amari Cooper, for a third-round pick, it actually, I liked this deal. I liked the deal more than I did with Davante Adams. And the reason of it is because with the Raiders, it's a conditional third that can turn into a second, which means will Davante Adams prevail and be productive to make it a second-round pick? That's the big question mark. At least with here, Cleveland's got a third. You can go and get another receiver in this draft if you really wanted to. You got to address some problems here. You got to address the O-line. You got to address quarterback. You got to keep this to where Cleveland Brown fans don't bail on this team and keep the promising future. I felt like that trade was win-win on both sides because Buffalo, let's talk about that. Buffalo, in my opinion, got a veteran receiver who's been in this league long enough and I think is taking himself out of the turmoil in Cleveland. You're switching from Deshaun Watson to Josh Allen. The other thing is you have a rookie wide receiver in Keon Coleman, right, that you need to build and develop. You just saw how the receiving core looked without Khalil Shakir. So you bring in a veteran receiver, you coach him up to where he looks like the best version of himself, and he's promising to the franchise in the future. Amari Cooper's capable of doing that. Watch the drops become more of receptions with Josh Allen. No drama. Don't even have to fight for who's feeding me the ball. You've got plenty of receivers now. This is actually an ideal situation, and I'm honestly glad that this ended up happening. Now, on Cleveland's side with the third-round pick, you at least can get a receiver, address the O-line. We know right now, and even Chase brought it up earlier here on the program, that Kevin Stefanski is basically coming out and saying they're rolling with Deshaun Watson and could have the chances of success. I'm holding my breath to that. I don't know if he was fed the statement from there, so I'm going to hold my breath on that. But at least for Cleveland, all is not lost as long as you do this right. You could clearly tell with the way this trade happened, Andrew Berry's smart. He's not an idiot. That's where I felt like, okay, you're doing a service to Amari Cooper, but then you're also getting positive compensation back in return. So I felt like this was a much better deal than I felt like the Jets and the Raiders were. Because now the Raiders have to sit around hoping Davante Adams plays and he's productive and he becomes a conditional third into a second round. At least here I have a third round pick and I also have an additional pick for next year. So I'm very sure-minded of this. So I think honestly it was a win-win on both sides. Buffalo gets another veteran receiver, helps out Josh Allen, helps out the receiving core, and the Browns could honestly live for another day and hope the future continues to be bright. Chase, you know it is better than anybody, with Ohio sports and how, just how critical that they can be. Am I wrong for saying that? Because honestly, like I said, I watched two different business deals, one that's crossing your fingers that third becomes a second, and this one sure-minded because you got a third-round pick for this upcoming season, and then you got one for the next season after. I mean, I felt like this was better of the two.
No, it definitely is. That gives us 11 picks now to work with in the draft. We got 2/3, I believe 2 or 3 sixes, and I think 3 sevenths as well. And not only that, the first and the second. And Andrew Berry's never been a guy that loves to trade up in the draft, but I think that he could package a couple of these picks and trade up to get some good players. And I do believe that, a lot of people want to dismiss what he's doing in Cleveland, and I think that he's taken it the year that he took off from football as a GM, and he went to go learn under Howie Roseman, I think was a phenomenal choice for Andrew Berry to do before we ended up picking him up in 2020. And he's done a lot of great things for this team and done a lot of very stupid things for this team, Deshaun Watson deal, but I think that was more ownership than anything. However, I was talking with a few people. Is this a full rebuild or is this a retool of this team? I think this team is way too talented. I think you've got great defensive pieces. I think it's more of a retool than it is a rebuild, because if you can go into the draft and you can pick up an offensive lineman, a great running back, a wide receiver, and a quarterback, I think you'll be all set for the offense in the next couple years.
And here's my other thing, though, too, because I know Cleveland has an eye for defense. Yes. I don't have a problem with that. That's why I'm like, you can maybe go and give up maybe about 2, possibly 3, to get some draft compensation, because the whole deal is that because if they're riding this wave with Deshaun Watson, then my guess is you may have potentially thrown this season away. I'm not looking at it as a negative, but I'm looking at it as you've thrown this away because initially they want to get out of this Deshaun Watson business. I don't blame them. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you get out of it, you get more compensation back so that you can go and address the much needed positions and add depth for those, because look at what's happened with the offensive line. I mean, you could see teams in this league right now, you are starting to see how tested these depth rosters are. Yep. Because it's important. And so you don't have the depth, you don't have the stability. That makes it even harder for you to go through an entire 18-week stretch of a season.
Yeah, and the trade deadline is November 5th. They added an extra week onto it this year. In the next 3 weeks, look for 3 more potential Cleveland Browns names to be on the trade block.
Yeah.
Denzel Ward, Zadarius Smith, and Wyatt Teller.
Oh, wow.
And I could see them for 3 reasons, and that's it. 1, Denzel Ward, I feel like the right team, you could fetch a borderline first-round pick for him because of how talented and how good he is. Especially if it's a team like the Lions or the Chiefs or the Bills or whoever needs a top corner in the league.
Honestly, because Asante Samuel, he was put on the IR. He's going to be missing for it was supposed to be 4 weeks. So after this week, it's now gone to 3. The Chargers have signed Eli Apple to the practice squad for now. But if you can make a deal, because they're gonna look for any kind of pieces, because I kind of already know, and not pushing my fandom out, but they need a receiver, they need a corner. I also do think that they could be in the market for a D lineman, but I also do think, cross your fingers, you might actually look for somebody in the interior O-line. So those are the 4 things I can kind of see. But yeah, a lot of teams. My problem with Cleveland is I was like, Denzel Ward is so talented, but why is it that Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, I was like, he's so talented, you could have used him in first halves to limit the damage of some of the scoring, and then you'll make the second half adjustments and he looks great. I think if you put him in the right areas for the compensation you'll get back, I think he was definitely worth the pickup.
Yeah, no, he easily is. The other guy I can think of is Zadarius Smith. He's a starter. He's been fully healthy for the past 2 years. He hasn't had any issues, and I think that a main team that could use him now is the Detroit Lions, with Aiden Hutchinson being down. If you were to throw a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick Cleveland's way for Zadarius, I could see him going there. And, they've got a decent amount of cap space to pick him up for $10 million for the next 2 years. I think it's a good choice. And the last guy that I got on my mind is Wyatt Teller. I could honestly see Wyatt Teller getting traded only because who wouldn't want a 2-time All-Pro? Like, he has been voted All-Pro. He's been voted on the top 100 list a few times.
And he's a tackle, correct? Or is
he is our right guard.
Ooh.
And the thing is, like, he's been voted as an All-Pro first and second team before. He has been a Pro Bowler multiple times. And the thing is, he just signed a multi-year contract, like I think like either last year or 2 years ago for us. And, you know, if Andrew Berry wants to get out from under some cap space, trading Denzel Ward, who has a $14 million cap hit, and then Wyatt Teller, who's, I believe, got like closer to a $20 million cap hit, that'll free up at least $35, $36 million that you've got right there in those two players.
And not to mention, too, because, I mean, this next upcoming draft, it's defensive-centric, but there are some very good O-linemen to keep in mind of, because especially if you're dealing with Jedrick Wills.
And Zach Zinter that we just drafted.
That's right. So you're now dealing with, and I love Zach Zinter. I really do, because watching him in Michigan, the guy can be shut down. So, you know, and you're dealing with Joel Bitonio still. You had Jedrick Wills. So there is an opportunity where you can even go and get a depth lineman and see how Zinter really pans out for the next couple of years. He's a hit. I mean, then
he's starting right now because Wyatt Teller's out, and he's going to be out for the next like 2 games. Yeah. But they drafted Zinter to take over for Bitonio because they think he's going to retire this year.
Yeah,
like after the season's over with. But I saw Zinter play at Michigan before he broke his tibia and everything, and I did see how shut down this guy was, and I think that he is going to be a phenomenal piece for us. I mean, obviously he's had a rough start to his NFL career, but then again, that whole O-line has. I mean, without Bill Callahan there, that offensive line is looking bad, and I think the O-line coach has a lot to do with it.
Oh, 100%. Well, like I said, we're diving into this. We're only scratching the surface today. So we're not even there yet with the rest of the show today. So there's a lot to talk about because I don't know about you, but coming up after the break, I know Chase knows about Ohio sports better than anybody, but I felt like that thriller from Ohio State and Oregon, I got many takeaways on this. Because I thought this was interesting. I mean, because it really, really is testing the patience of Ohio State fans with Ryan Day. Why I do think, because again, I felt like I was going to go all in on the train, but as a glass half full guy, I'm just going to tread, the tightrope right now with where Ohio State's going, and for a few reasons, and I'll get to that here in just a few minutes. So, all right, well, I'll tell you one thing. Absolutely loved our merchandise company for providing some of the best merchandise looks for the show. As you know, the Snake Sports Talk Show merchandise gear. We've got a sale because we are not here to trick. We're here to give you a treat during the spooky season of October. And when you go online to snakesportstalkshow.com, enter in the promo code SPOOKY24 and you will get 25% off. Additional percentages when you spend over $75 or more in your purchases. Hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and so much more. Prep for your favorite show on YouTube and all over social media here today on the Snake Sports Talk Show merchandise. Chase, you got to get in it, man. I'm telling you, I loved how this came out, man. But
yeah, I love it. It looks nice, and I'm a big hat guy too. So I feel like wearing that around and everything would be great, especially to help promote the show.
Absolutely. So get yours today, Spooky 24 during October season here on the Snake Sports Talk Show merchandise store.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Boy, I can't stop bragging about how good this merchandise really does look. Fourth Wall has done an amazing job. Our our merchandise company, our Snake Sports Talk Show merchandise store, we got more up and coming, especially for here on the Sports Wave Network. So we got more up and coming brands. Stay tuned for that. But here's what I will want to talk about, because over the weekend I watched, from beginning to end, arguably a classic between Ohio State and Oregon. And there's a few takeaways I took out of this. Number one is, you guys remember how Kirby Smart built his empire in Georgia. Now, Georgia's always been known as football down south, gridiron, they play hard, and they definitely recruit very well. I mean, if you think about it, between Georgia and Alabama and a lot of schools down south, they recruit very well. They've got a very good recruiting program. But when Kirby Smart came around and was the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, I mean, I knew right then and there, this was a culture guy in this program, knew exactly what to do with this program. Now, I know since Stetson Bennett, since Jake Fromm, and a couple other quarterbacks, Carson Beck right now, we started to see the underlying truths with him. I'm not gonna basically burn him on that. Carson Beck's a good kid, but I do think there should be some mechanics that need to be cleaned up. But my takeaway is that Kirby Smart, who else did he end up having on this coaching staff before taking on the job when Mario Cristobal ended up moving into Miami? That was Dan Lanning. And part of this Kirby Smart coaching tree, Dan Lanning is another one who understands culture build because he's been around Kirby Smart. You're starting to see this in Oregon. Okay. Could you have imagined Dan Lanning when he had Justin Herbert before he declared for the draft? That was at a time when Mario Cristobal had him. Now, Oregon at the time was pretty conservative. Okay, they were not a big play, quarterback play program for quite a while. Okay, they ran the football efficiently. They've had some very good, tough defensive clutch stops over the last few years.
But when Dan Lanning arrived, it was going to be a complete switch up. And then, sure enough, who was up there up and on this transfer portal? Bo Nix at Auburn. They get him, and you started to see a lot of big-time, flashy plays, throwing the deep ball. Bo Nix, now I'm starting to see a little bit more of that here in the NFL. It's going to take a little bit of some time, but I've got a very good positive look on Bo Nix. But the point is, Dan Lanning, he then lands Dillon Gabriel from Oklahoma. Now, initially, this offense didn't start as well once he arrived in the first 2-3 weeks, but now they're starting to get into a train. So this particular game against Ohio State proved to me a few things. Is that Dan Lanning, I think ultimately, coming from a Kirby Smart culture, is a culture coach. You could see it in this Oregon program. Okay? They're built tough. They're built to play trench warfare. And I'm not going to say that they could potentially be fraudulent come the game against Purdue. They could get exposed in some ways because it's a short week. Purdue's not as great of a program, but they have been a program that could be playing spoiler. But Oregon's great. And the other thing is, I've paid attention to Ryan Day. And I had some time to think about this. Because the first part of me was getting on the train that Ryan Day is not the guy at Ohio State. And the reason for this is he's 1-7 against teams in the top 5. The other thing is he has only lost a bunch of times to one particular program in the Big Ten, and that was Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. He couldn't get it right. And I mean, again, whether that was an emotional, thrilling game, you still have to be able to prove you can beat Michigan in these games. But this was not Michigan they lost to, okay? This was not even Michigan State. Not even a couple of other programs that you know have been around in the Big Ten for years. This is a first-year program in the Big Ten with a culture coach in Dan Lanning, and you lost to them. So that now has opened the eyes of Ohio State fans. And I was on the defending Ryan Day train. I really was last year because after the loss to Michigan, I told every Ohio State fan, I said, take a deep breath, pump the brakes for a second. Because first of all, it was Jim Harbaugh and Michigan versus everybody. They're on a roll. They are waiting to win games and win the big game to basically flip the bird at the Big Ten and at the NCAA. And sure enough, look what happened. It was not on Ryan Day for that. Now, they do switch quarterbacks from Kyle McCord to Will Howard. And boy, do I love the kid. Will Howard's accurate. The other thing is he's also mobile, which I was kind of curious how that was going to work with Chip Kelly. But I like with what I've seen, even with Quinshon Judkins and with also their young star wide receiver that I really, really like, the freshman. You know what I'm talking about. Ohio State is not a kind of program that's just going to basically, miss these opportunities. They are still going to be a productive program. They really are. They produced some of the best wide receivers. They've produced some of the best specialty positions, including Tommy Eichenberg, the linebacker, even a running back. So they're capable of doing that. But my point is that in a matchup like this, in a first-year arrival for Oregon, you couldn't let that happen. And here's another thing that also outsmarted you. Okay, remember at the end of that game, like close to the end of that game, you know what Dan Lanning did? Dan Lanning took a penalty that took time off the clock. Okay, which really screwed up the mental warfare for Ohio State. Because in the end, here comes Will Howard and that offense, and they're looking to run a play. And what ended up happening? After time was shed off, Howard tries to go and make a play, and he literally pulled off a DAC. Ran the football. Time expires. Game over. And that was the part that really lit Ohio State fans the most. Why would you go for that kind of run play? Why would you end up doing all of this? This is why people are literally treading these waters right now, because they're hoping, and Ohio State fans are circling over that game, is the game against Michigan. You lose to Michigan one more time without Jim Harbaugh. Am I crazy for saying that I think this might be the end of the road for Ryan Day? Because you cannot afford to be 1-7 against top 5 programs. You cannot afford to end up not only losing multiple times to Michigan in the last few years in the Big Ten, but you lost to a first-year arrival in Oregon and Dan Lanning, who's building potentially an empire. Okay? Out of all four programs that moved into the Big Ten, Oregon's got the positive upside that all the other 4. Okay? You could say USC has an offense. Defensively, they are looking better, but there's still some things they need to clean up. Washington, it's going to take a little bit of time with Jed Fish, but they could be on it. But when do we tell ourselves, when is this going to be the end of the line? I'm not saying I'm getting emotional and just saying fire Ryan Day, but just keep that on the back of your head, because that Michigan game is where every Ohio State fan, I guarantee you, is tuning on that television. They are watching closely at the play calling, and you're hoping that Ryan Day actually executes. I wish no bad juju on this. But after that game this past Saturday, a lot is going to be on the line for Ohio State. This is your moment to win the national title. You can't do that if you have a result like this one. Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
Hated having to get into this because I know you know Ohio sports more than anybody, but am I wrong for saying that? Because I've heard so many outside Ohio State fans out there, and they've been on this fire Ryan Day train since the beginning. So I'm like, I don't know what to think of it. I was at first going to go on that train, but then I had to say, whoa, timeout. I'm not going to go fully onto it because of the way the emotions and the tensions rose. I'm just waiting for that Michigan game. I think
what I would say that you're wrong about is he needs fired. He absolutely needs fired. I am an Ohio State fan that has been watching them for years tonight, and I agree with the fire Ryan Day. Because here is the problem that everybody's not realizing and that people are overlooking is Ryan Day inherited a team from Urban Meyer that was a dominant team, and the reason why they beat Michigan for the first couple of years. Because he beat Michigan for the first couple of years because of those defensive players that Urban Meyer had, like a Chase Young and, like a, couple linebackers that you had. The problem that Ryan Day has is he cannot recruit defense to save his life.
Yeah.
He really cannot recruit defense to save his life. Denzel Burke got burnt like toast. Yeah. We have not had a first-round edge rusher since Chase Young at Ohio State. We have not had a first-round linebacker or a second-round linebacker out of Ohio State come into the draft since Urban Meyer. And we also have not had a first-round corner since Urban Meyer. And you could say Jeff Okudah, but again, inherited from Urban Meyer. Yep. And the thing is, you also have Urban was there for 11 years, never lost to Michigan. Well, lost to Michigan one time. No, he didn't. He never lost to Michigan. Then you had Jim Tressel, barely lost to Michigan. Ryan Day has beaten Michigan twice, and that was with an Urban Meyer ran team. He had C.J. Stroud, who was the second pick in the draft, who has been dominant in the NFL and is in contention for an MVP talks. And then you also had, Marvin Harrison Jr., you had Jackson Smith and Jigba, you had Emeka Ibuka, you had Chris Olave, you had Garrett Wilson. And you're telling me with that offense, you could not score more than what you did against Michigan. I'm sorry, but he cannot recruit defense.
And he's doing this again. I mean, you got Quinshon Judkins, you got Travion Henderson, and you got Igbuka, who's going to declare for the draft, and then you got a freshman now I really like. I mean,
he does not know what to do with the talent that he's got, and like I can promise you, the only Ohio State guy I see that is going in the first or like borderline first round is either JT Tuimoloau or Jack Sawyer on that defensive line. I can see maybe Denzel Burke getting thrown in there because he's a corner and he's been decent, but he has not, and I repeat, not looked great the past couple of weeks. So either he needs to fire Jim Knoll, who is the defensive coordinator, or we need to let Ryan Day go. The guy I would want to go get is the coach over at Indiana. Because everybody's been saying he is the next Nick Saban, and he knows what he's doing when it comes to recruiting and developing players.
I mean, we were talking about it with the ACC and the way that they've shaped up from there. I mean, they've looked very good, and that was where I was like, Miami's having their hands full, but especially with what I've seen from Indiana. I mean, because didn't he? Because I know he got moved previously before taking this Indiana job, right? Like, or
no. What had happened was he was with another team before that. I can't remember what one, but he worked for several years under Nick Saban. Yeah, learning the ropes, learning the way of college football, and now look at what Indiana's done. They go and get a transfer portal quarterback, and now they are 6-0. They are 6-0, and they've got a good team. And with them coming up on our schedule, I'm scared of the next few games. We've got Nebraska next with Dylan Raiola and how well he's been, and how well that Nebraska team's been. And we've got Penn State after that, Purdue after that. We still got to play Indiana, and we've got to play Michigan. If Ryan Day wants to get away from the talks of like he can't beat ranked teams, go into Penn State at the Penn State Nittany Lions and go beat them. Go beat the number 4 team in the nation right now.
And here's what's funny about that, because you saw how close that game was against USC.
Yeah.
I like Penn State, but I don't think they have that kind of juggernaut firepower to go against a Texas or even an Ohio State like that. So that's an opportunity to really shake things up. But that I didn't even think about that with Penn State, because this is a second shot that he has on this. So you go in and mind you, that's a tough environment too. And James Franklin, I like him as a coach, but I mean, that Penn State program knows how to ball, but I don't think they have that kind of juggernaut. So that's your second chance to really redeem yourself if you really want to get into and creep in to the college football playoffs. Like I said, in the beginning of the year, this was the opportunity to go and win it this time, because Michigan is losing Jim Harbaugh and they lost Jesse Minter. This was the chance to do it. I like Ole Miss, but I felt like there were some things that just kind of went wrong there. I don't think Ole Miss, though, is going to miss going into the playoffs. I think they'll pick themselves back up, but I think there was a little bit of some holes there this past weekend. But still, this was exciting, though.
It was. And, now with the 12-team college football playoffs, Ohio State's still at 4. There's still a chance for them to get that first-round bye because the top 4 teams get the bye. And I think that is what's needed. But here's the problem that also really ticks me off about Ryan Day. You have a guy that you recruited coming out of high school who was a 5-star recruit in Aaron Nolan, and he is on the bench. And he's been on the bench, and he won't get to play until his junior year, which is next year. You got Lincoln Kingholt, a 4-star recruit, and you also ended up going to get Dylan Cerulean, who transferred from Georgia to Ohio State and was a 5-star recruit and the number 1 quarterback in his draft class. And he's on the bench, and you are picking up a transfer in Will Howard to play him. See what you got in these guys. You recruited them really high out of high school for a reason. you think that they've got something that you need. And the one thing that we're missing on offense that we absolutely need is the ability to scramble as a quarterback. Dylan Cerulean can do it. Aaron Nolan can do it. Aaron Nolan's also accurate. Aaron Nolan's been with the program for 2 years, now almost 3, and yet he has yet to snip the field, because what happens when we're blowing out an opponent, you bring in Devin Brown.
Yep.
And you don't even try Keen Holmes. You don't try Cerulean. You don't try Aaron Nolan. And the problem is he had Quinn Ewers on the roster and then just let him walk. So I'm sorry, Ryan Day needs to go, because I don't get your fear of starting a true freshman when you've got true freshmen like Dylan Raiola over in Nebraska lighting it up right now.
My thing is, too, I mean, Matt Rule is he's a culture shaker as well. He's a culture coach, because if you've seen him in Temple, you've seen him in Baylor, and now you kind of see this. I mean, the first year in Nebraska, usually sometimes with these first-year coaches in some programs, it doesn't always go as well, but it's always the second year that they bounce back. And, having Dylan Raiola, I think he's really transformed that program. I don't think they have yet the same thing that I've said about, Penn State. I don't think they have yet that juggernaut firepower they're looking for. But at least I know Dylan Raiola, he's fresh. He's going to work himself to where he's going to be highly productive. And then eventually, if you get in a very good defense, especially with how Nebraska's been, because we haven't seen that since the 90s. But if you get a very good defense and you get in at least some very good, because especially wide receivers, if you get in some good guys that can get separation, that can be productive, get at least the receptions, then I think Nebraska would be right there on the track to really be that kind of program that could intimidate a lot of other programs around the country.
Yeah. As far as the news goes, man, I went away from that because we were talking about Ohio State. You got me on that topic, and now I'm a little heated. But, over the weekend, we saw some of the best baseball that we have ever seen in our entire lives.
Indeed, we did.
In terms of how the ALDS played out, you had the Tigers, had the Guardians on the ropes. All they needed to do was win one more in Detroit, and they move on to the ALCS to face the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah.
And the Guardians, with their backs against the wall, who have been 0 for their last 20 in elimination games, and they end up winning. They won 5-4 in Game 4, and then go to Cleveland against Tariq Skubal, who I've been saying screwball because, he messed up. And a lot of people were talking about how he is the best pitcher in baseball, the AL Cy Young winner, blah, blah, blah. Well, we took it to him. And now we have played the past couple weeks, past couple games in New York. We are losing now 3-0 again. But I think that this is where managing comes into play. We've got a rookie manager who's never managed a day before in his life, and he pulled our ace after the second inning to go into the bullpen because he was struggling a little bit on the mound. And I think that, a lot of the decisions that he's made recently have come back to haunt him because of the lack of experience. But man, your thoughts on the baseball that we have seen from the Mets and Dodgers, and then now the Yankees and Guardians?
I thought it was very entertaining, honestly, because, here's the thing. I mean, this was a very, I had a guy that works for Locked On Tigers, and I initially talked to him about this. I asked him about what's the state that the Tigers are in, because I couldn't quite figure this out. They were on this track record that, it's a rebuilding mode. No, they want to compete. Oh, it's a rebuilding mode. It was so confusing because of the fact that, one, Spencer Torkelson was not looking like himself. They bump him down to AAA, get at least some work, get some confidence back. So by the time he comes back into the show, Torkelson looked a lot better. And he's playing better as defensive. He's hitting better with the stick. And Tariq Skubal, let's not get this wrong. I mean, a pitching triple crown. The kid was fantastic. But he, and sometimes this always happens in postseason because that's where the regular season gets taken away. And now you're in the bigger stage where it's highly emotional. A lot is at stake. I mean, you look at the Mets. The Mets, since the first 2 months, were a horrific story. And then all of a sudden, Grimace comes out in June, and then all of a sudden they start playing well.
And Jose Iglesias.
Look, I had Frank Fleming on here, and initially he was ready to throw in the towel. Now look how happy he is right now that they're in the NLCS. I was just like, I had to hold my breath because I was like, something in there. The Mets are going to do something that I was like, because the Phillies obviously looked like frauds. The Braves, of course, injury after injury and then inconsistency. The Braves didn't look their best. So this was the opportunity for the Mets to take advantage of it, and now they are. I felt like, this postseason the past weekend was really good. I got a highly emotional game between San Diego and the Dodgers. And, sure enough, look at the Dodgers after that. Consecutive scoreless innings. And the Padres, there's a point where you do play loose, but don't poke at exactly your division rival that they were looking for payback in that. Because they haven't forgotten when the Padres eliminated them. Now, the Padres is an interesting offseason for them. But at the same time, they're here to stay. They're here to be a postseason type of team. It's going to take a bit, but I think they'll be back in this. I think you bring back Kyle Higashioka. I think you bring back some of the important ones. But Jackson Merrill's so promising at outfield. I think they found a stud there. But the Dodgers, it scared the hell out of me at first because I was like, I wasn't sure what they were going to do with their starters. I felt like Dave Roberts in some spots kind of used the bullpen not correctly, but then he finally reverted that. Now, this game, too, against the Mets, it kind of seemed like he reverted back to where it was when they first started against the Padres again. So who knows how now the next 3 games in Queens is going to be like. Because you're going into a tied series now, and it's all or nothing. And so, but as of right now, right now the Yankees are leading the Guardians, but still, Cleveland came away with a big-time win. Now you're facing the Big Apple of the Yankees. And I don't know, man. I think with where this train is rolling, I think we very much could see potentially a Yankee-Dodger World Series because, honestly, the last time we had a Subway Series World Series was back in 2000. And not a lot of people tuned into it because it was all the Yankees. It wasn't all the Mets at that time, even though they were a beautiful story. But the Yankees' dominance in the three-peat was the one thing that really kind of sealed the deal from there. So I don't know, man. This has been great.
It's very difficult because in this Subway Series, if there is one, it'll be massively different because the Mets actually have the offensive firepower to compete. And, don't count the Guardians out. They are a scrappy team. I think that, Travis Banzana ended up, turning a lot of heads in the minor leagues this year and AA Akron. He was batting by the end of the season in just the 3 months that he was there. He was batting almost a 330 average and was lighting it up. And I'm telling you, this kid will be up in the majors probably halfway through the season next year, along with our other outfielder, Chase DeLauder, who was lighting it up in terms of hitting when he was healthy. Now getting both of those guys back and some young pitching that we've got. I'm excited for that. I cannot wait. And another year with Stephen Vogt as the manager, another year with this young Guardians team. If we can also get Shane Bieber back on this roster, that would be a huge pickup and everything. But, I am not going to be upset if we lose the ALCS because we made it to the championship series. We made it with the first-year manager. We made it further than what a lot of people had us going at the start of the season. They had us finishing 4th in the division instead of winning it. So I'm very excited.
Who thought 3 AL Central teams would make the season this year?
Yeah, it's very, very crazy how things have panned out and how things have worked. But I'm excited. Let's switch into the football side of things and the aspect that's going on there. We have seen Spencer Rattler as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints rather than Jake Haener. And I think that is a great thing because they're wanting to see what they got in Spencer Rattler, because that is potentially the replacement for Derek Carr when he is gone.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, the Saints, I mean, yeah, they started very good in that game against Baker, but then fell off very horribly in a game that, I mean, the Buccaneers were in full control. 50 points in that entirety. Like, that was one that I was just like, the one thing I could take the positive for the Saints, I at least have a very good productive quarterback for the future. But my roster now is starting to look old. Okay, you are starting to see it look old. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, and Cam Jordan, like all of the pivotal defensive guys, they are starting to look old. And they're already at the point where they're already getting that luxury tax penalty. So you got to make up some moves. And I think initially, like, because the future is bright. I love what I'm seeing with Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. So I think if you do this right, I mean, yeah, Spencer Rattler looked really good. And by the way, did you know that there were 5 quarterbacks that started last Sunday that all were coached under Lincoln Riley? Tell me one thing that, like, that a quarterback whisper. Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Spencer Rattler, and there's one other quarterback I'm missing too. Oh, Kyler Murray. All 5. They all started last Sunday. That just tells you a lot that he just has the niche for quarterback play.
Let's have him go to the Cleveland Browns to be the head coach then. Damn.
Hey, if you pay him LA money, I mean, you know, that may be the only way.
One more thing is we finally saw the debut of Drake May with the New England Patriots.
Yes.
And may I say that, yeah, he threw 2 interceptions, but this dude also came in with the roster that he has, the O-line that he has, and the weakness that you have in terms of offensive firepower. He is the only quarterback that at his first game in there, he threw 3 touchdown passes.
Yes, he did.
And was this close to leading the team to victory. And may I say that I was right about Drake May. I was right about Drake May. I was right about how good he is. If you give him a decent to great O-line and you get him 1 or 2 weapons, this Patriots offense will look dominant.
I mean, I said it to people. I was like, look, why would you be afraid to start Drake May? Okay, look at that throw. That throw right there, does that remind you of anybody, at least currently in that league? He's the closest thing to Justin Herbert. The only difference of it is I do believe that there's a part of his game that does need to readjust. But besides that, they both are alike than you think because they both had a horrible O-line in their rookie seasons, okay? They both did. PFF graded the Chargers' offensive line was horrible. And you go into a game where it was very difficult. I think we all knew that. It was a difficult opponent, but much like with Herbert, you were at home against the Chiefs. Now, again, there may not have been any film, but you came in with an opportunity to really kind of surprise and shock some people. Now, the difference of it is Herbert did get forced in because of a punctured lung. But at least with Drake May, the thing is because he came in because Jacoby Brissett was not performing the way he should. So why not? My question of it is why wouldn't you want to see what you have in your quote-unquote franchise quarterback so you can go into the draft and say, because if he hits, now you're asking yourself, okay, what else now do we need to do to complement him? Offensive line, wide receivers, probably go and get maybe the top best prospect in the position, which is probably what's on the back of some of the Patriots fans' minds. I think now you could do it.
It's either you're either looking at Travis Hunter or you're looking at Telvin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas, or Will Campbell, the OT out of LSU. Now let me tell you this stat line and let me know what you think. 20 for 33 for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 4 sacks.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot sit here and tell me that those are not good numbers for a rookie quarterback that came in and made his first debut and potentially with the worst O-line in the league.
Oh, yeah. No, that was initially, that was exactly with where I thought. I was like, okay, they're not there yet, but it looked a lot better than I thought it would. And so, again, it's one game, but give me a whole stretch. And that was only week 6, which is what we talked about. But that looked a lot better than I thought. All right, Chase with the news.
This is the hot press.
So, of course, I got to wrap this up quickly, but I figured I'll save my grilling for Friday. There's going to be no show tomorrow because of family day for me. So we'll definitely pick up where we left off up on Friday, especially with NFL prime predictions. Chase and I have been up on fire on this thing, and it's only going to get a lot better from here. I'm excited for what this upcoming week is going to look like because there's a lot of stuff. There's some very good prime times. I felt like this past week, it was actually pretty good for favorites this week. So we definitely hit on a lot of the right spots. So, all right, folks, that's going to do it here for us, for Chase and myself here on the show, sponsored by BetUS. When you go online to BetUS, $50 or more into your deposit for 125% bonuses. That means it matches up to $2,000 in your first 3 deposits when you sign up. And don't forget to shout out who sent you so that you guys can get the bonuses that you want to get more of the experience of BetUS. Gambling problem, call the number and call 1-800-GAMBLER to seek therapy and seek the help you need to, because BetUS wants you to gamble responsibly here when you use the site. BetUS, where the game begins, and also up on SeatGeek. Some of the best ticketing prices at the most affordable price and in the best seats possible for you to get in on the action and get into the best experience you've got possible here when SeatGeek has you covered on the best seats at the affordable price and the most trustworthy ticketing app for your next event. That's SeatGeek.com. Download on your mobile device or Google Play in the App Store. Use promo code SnakeSports for $20 off. Jake and Chase, we are out of here, and we will see you guys picking things up on Friday. Take care, you guys.
Take care.